At first, the lengths the Trump world went to try to influence the January 6th committee's star witness. This is according to the witness herself. The panel has just put out transcripts of former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. This, as we're expecting the committee to release a full report of its findings today. CNN's Kristen Holmes joins us now. What can you tell us?
Well, Pamela, this is, as you said, Cassidy Hutchinson, in her own words, describing what she says was a pressure campaign from Trump world, including her Trump paid attorney, Stephen Passantino, to really downplay her testimony, even being encouraged that if she was loyal, that she would be taken care of. Now, I do want to tell you specifically, because she talks about when she had this breaking point with her attorney. She says that she was cooperating with the committee, and then he told her not to and said this: contempt is a small risk, but running to the right is better for you. Now, a couple things to note here. These are two interviews from September after we saw that live interview and after she had moved on from Passantino. This, again, is why she said she had that breaking point. And as you'll remember, on Monday, the January 6th committee alleged that they had information that a White House, or excuse me, a Trump-backed attorney had been pressuring their client in this way to say, essentially downplay their testimony or maybe say that they don't recall. And CNN found out that that was former White House ethics lawyer Stephen Passantino. Just to give you an insight into what else is here, this is what she said Stephen told her to say specifically. I want to make it clear to you, Stephen never told me to lie. He specifically told me, I don't want you to perjure yourself, but I don't recall isn't perjury. They don't know what you can and can't recall. And that's something that he said to her on multiple occasions. Now, just to give you some insight into what her mind was at, this is what she says. She says that through this process, she was almost as though she felt like she had Trump himself looking over her shoulder, because she knew in some fashion it would get back to him if he said anything that he would find as disloyal. And that prospect of that genuinely scared me. That's what she says. You know, I'd seen this world ruin people's lives or try to ruin people's careers. I'd seen how vicious they can be. And I do want to read a statement here from her former lawyer, Stephen Passantino. This was in response to that CNN story saying that he was the person the January 6th committee alleged had been asking their client to downplay their testimony. He has not responded yet to the actual transcripts. Says, I believed Ms. Hutchinson was being truthful and cooperative with the committee throughout the several interview sessions in which I represented her. Now, Pamela, this is not the only thing that is in here. She also talks about getting jobs dangled in front of her, setting up meetings at the time she didn't have a job. Again, being told by people in Trump's orbit that if she was loyal, she would be taken care of, particularly being called by aides to Mark Meadows, who she had worked for, and saying that Mark is telling that aide to call her and say that she can say she doesn't recall if she doesn't recall. These are all things that she was feeling as part of the pressure campaign. And again, this is her own words describing what she felt was this campaign during this time. And one other thing I do want to note here, because there might be some question as to how she ended up with Passantino in the first place. And she describes that at length in these interviews, saying that she had exhausted every other option, that she was looking for someone and she couldn't actually afford a lawyer that she believed should be representing her. And that is when she turned to Trump world for help.
All right. Wow. That's a lot there, Kristen. Thank you so much. Joining me now to discuss CNN's Lauren Fox, Politico's Alex Burns, Francesca Chambers of USA Today, and CNN legal analyst and former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams. Wow. Remarkable. This is under oath from the committee's star witness, Cassidy Hutchinson. It's her fifth interview with the committee. And she really lays out this picture, Alex, of a pressure campaign coming at her from all ends of the Trump world, that she felt indebted to them and was repeatedly told to be loyal, that there could be jobs for her. And then, of course, we know she left and switched lawyers. What stands out to you?
Look, I think that what stands out to me, first of all, we had heard some of these elements from the committee in a pretty vague fashion, right? That witnesses felt intimidated or deterred from speaking in one way or another. What really sort of pops out to me just as a political reporter is that we've known for the longest time that this is how Trump's world operates, not necessarily with witnesses who are testifying under oath, but just pretty comprehensively. If you're a Republican candidate running somewhere in the country and you want his support, you need to bend the knee in some way. If you're a governor who's looking for ventilators for your state or disaster aid of some kind, you need to make a show of loyalty. So I think there's something that's not terribly shocking that this is how lawyers close to Donald Trump would be interacting with just people generally, but obviously the risks and consequences of behaving like this are totally different right now. And I think you do get, coming out of this committee, a picture of former President Trump and the people around him as not necessarily having adapted to a world where there are suddenly real consequences for their actions, where they don't control the Justice Department or the mechanics of congressional investigation.
Yeah, I mean, some of this reads out of like a mafia novel or something. Like, oh my gosh, when I was reading it. And we should note again, this is Cassidy Hutchinson speaking under oath to the committee. Stefan Passantino has released a statement. He says, I believed Ms. Hutchinson was being truthful and cooperative with the committee throughout the several interview sessions in which I represented her. So clearly he has another side to this. But in the transcript, Elliot, it says, everything's going to be okay. We're taking care of you. This is what Hutchinson described Passantino as saying, quote, just downplay your position. It's not fair that Mark Meadows, her former boss, the chief of staff to Trump, put you in this position. We just want to focus on protecting the president. We all know you're loyal. Let's just get you in and out, and this day will be easy, I promise.
Oh, Lord, where to begin? This is like first year of law school criminal law class playing out because of all the sort of issues this raises. Number one, what you have is knowledge on the part of the former president that he lost the election. That is relevant to an obstruction charge. It's relevant to a conspiracy to defraud the United States charge. And it's relevant to this false statement charge that they're talking about from the former president that he knew he lost, right? And what you're going to see from the committee, I think, is rolling out all these statements where people brought to the former president the knowledge that he lost, right? Two, obstruction of justice. Any of these people who are directing a witness to say something or not say something on the stand in the event that it frustrates, or with the goal of frustrating the investigation, is itself an act of obstruction of justice. So it's not just the former president here, it's Passantino and others around him who might have been trying to influence her testimony. So this is quite serious. And because a lot of these statements are what you'd call hearsay, it's one person saying what another person says, they're piling them up because you need to be able to get at least one of them. Yeah, you got to corroborate them because you can't get them in by themselves.
And on that note, there has been, we have seen corroboration of Trump knowing he lost and trying to overturn the election. And it says in the transcripts that several times Donald Trump, when he was president, told her, I know I lost, but we got to figure out a way out of this. And that is pretty damning because state of mind intent is a big part of what DOJ is looking at.
Exactly. And I think that Mark Meadows told Cassidy Hutchinson a couple of times, according to these transcripts, that he also believed that the president knew he had lost. And that is significant here for what DOJ is looking at. We know that DOJ has started getting some of the information from this committee. It's going to be obviously up to them what they want to do here. The referrals do not require them to take any action. But I think that the large thing that stuck out to me was people forget that these are government employees. These are not wealthy individuals. Cassidy Hutchinson
She's only 26
she was
years
a
old.
junior
Let's not forget
staffer,
this.
right? And she is dealing with the fact she's going to have to go before this committee. And she was telling her mom that she felt like, what am I going to do? I can't afford a fancy lawyer that I think I probably need to get me through this. So she had to turn to Trump World for a period of time, in her own words. And I think that that is such a compelling part of this transcript and something that people back home, I think, need to remember about people who work in government.
The context. Yeah. Exactly. I think that's important. Her age is important. The pressure she was under. I mean, she said many times in the transcript, she was relaying to the committee how scared she was. She was worried that if she turned on the president, that Trump World would turn on her. And you can imagine what a 26-year-old would be feeling. I'm curious what your take is on what she also said that Passantino allegedly told her. Contempt is a small risk, but running to the right is better for you.
Well, as you were saying, I think the point of the committee at this point is to keep this at the forefront of people's minds, because from a political standpoint with the former president planning to run for president again, a lot of this is going to play out politically, play out on the presidential campaign trail. When you go back to the testimony, though, I want to talk about Hope Hicks for a moment. She was someone who was so close to the president. The president saw her as like a daughter, and she was also on the record saying that she told people that he had essentially lost, that tried to get him to speak out on January 6th. And that is so critical. She is someone who, when she left the first time, I mean, he did a whole call and aid walk with her, which is something that's usually reserved for foreign leaders, for instance. So her testimony is very important also.
Really quick, and wrapping it up with you, Elliot, what is just legally looking at the contempt claim that she made, that she felt pressured from Trump allies on this, not to talk in June, we should note, and instead risk contempt. And there's a difference, right, with the lawyer saying, hey, don't offer too much unless they ask you. And
it's, again, it steps up to the line and probably might be obstruction of justice. You're telling somebody to run afoul of a committee that is investigating you. You're telling them not to answer questions truthfully. And you don't have to strain really hard to say that you are trying to frustrate or impede the investigation. That could be obstruction of justice. It's a federal crime.
it's something DOJ in the end is investigating, so we will see. All right, thank you all so much.